Namaste everyone, and let us research Devalayam. So to start with, we need to look at who are we as a people, those of the civilization called Bharat. It is important to recognize that Hindu is not actually something that we called ourselves. It was a name given to us by outsiders. Sanātana-dharma has been used in a sense of universality, including systems such as Hindu, Sikh, Jain, and Buddhist. However, during the later part of the 1800s, the term began to be used more to depict a Hindu way of life. So let us look at what is Sanātana-dharma and what would be an accurate term to describe the Hindu. First, let us look at Sanātana-dharma and look at other religions around the world. The Indic systems practice dharma to bring harmony in society because dharma means that which makes you steadfast. So these are not religions because they have no structured rules of practice or dogma. The only objective of these philosophies is to experience peace or shanti. So the Indic systems are not religions. All are based on the application of cognition in daily life. So this is a very important part that we need to recognize. These are not linear systems. They are asymmetric and use cognition as the base on which various aspects of life are decided. All of them consider sacrifice or yajna to be the bulwark or the centerpiece or the anchor of the civilization. All also agree on the concept of karma and samsara. That means the cycle of birth and death. Now, where does the word dharma come from? Dharma comes from the Sanskrit root word dhr, which means steady, solid, steadfast, and unshakable. So, essentially, this means that this is the natural state of any entity because when we are in our natural state, we are in the maximum amount of peace with ourselves. So, this is the first part. Importantly, this also includes sentient as well as insentient entities because both sentient and insentient entities have a natural state. Just like hydrogen has a separate atomic weight and atomic number, gold has an atomic weight and an atomic number, which makes it its natural state. Similarly, sentient creatures like me, you, and others, we also have a natural state. In sentient entities, this is the state where there is no turbulence. Because we have senses, we experience turbulence and change. Whereas insentients don't experience that change. So, in sentient creatures or sentient entities, this is that state where we are at peace with ourselves. So, dharma can be therefore called the design intent of any entity. Let's look at some examples of Sanātana-dharma or the universal natural state. For example, the earth sustains life. That is its dharma. The sky protects the earth. That is its dharma. Language is meant for communication. That is the dharma of a language. Governments are meant to govern by the constitution. That is the dharma of the government. Schools are meant to create responsible citizens. That is the dharma of a school. And parents are supposed to nourish and cherish their children. And this is the dharma of parents. Now, when we look at this on a micro level, it is a conditioning of individuals to live in an environment that has its own natural state so that we integrate as closely as possible to the natural state of all entities without creating turbulence between ourselves and them. Another example of Sanatana Dharma for us humans. We are like computers. Our configuration, whether we are an 8-bit machine or a 16-bit machine or a 32-bit machine or whatever, our configuration comes from our prarabdha karma as our parents' DNA. At birth, we have a very basic BIOS or a basic input-output system. That is, we know how to cry, we know how to sleep, we know how to eat, and we know how to perform our basic ablutions. But we are completely helpless. Our parents load our operating system, and this is the operating system we keep for life. Our teachers and friends add software, skills, knowledge, and values. Then we get networked into a society. Now, the interesting thing is, the society will always operate with a protocol that is different from ours. At least, even though we may be trained in that society, there will be certain subtle differences, and that takes time. And so, what happens is that we always have to then integrate our protocol with the network that we call society. When we don't, then we have friction and that creates heat. Over time, we begin to adapt to the network. We become part of a society, a state, and a country. This is Sanātana-dharma. Now, let us look at Hindu Dharma. Hindu Dharma is more accurately described as Āstika-dharma. Why Āstika-dharma? Because Hindu Dharma is based on two fundamental precepts. That is, that all knowledge comes from the Vedas and that the Vedas are a Paurushya. That means they are not of a person, they are out of the experience of a human nature. This is a very important understanding of who Hindus actually are. So, we probably need to be described more accurately as people who follow Āstika-dharma or people of Āstika Samaja. Those that accept that the Vedas are the source of knowledge and that they are apaurushya are called Astikas, and those that don't accept this are called Nastikas. Nastikas include Buddhists and Jains. Sikhs are Astikas. If you look at the Sikh prayer, Ek Onkar, it is completely Vedanta. Now let us compare this with concept of God in the rest of the world. The Sanskrita word Deva is the cognate of the Greek Dios, Italian Deus, Persian Deva, German Devas, Lithuanian Divas, and Germanic Tivas. The root is the same. Then the question really is, did they follow the same concept of Deva as we do? The answers are probably yes, because we do not really have an accurate system of what was followed in Europe before the advent of Christianity. So, for all practical purposes, we can assume that the Deva, because of the existence of Zeus and Jupiter and the other Devas, which have now been completely negated by Christianity, it can be safely assumed that the conceptual understanding of what a Deva was the same across Europe as is currently being used in Bharat. What I'm saying is that the application of Deva in classical Europe or pre-Christian Europe was probably the same as what we currently use in Bharat. This was then superimposed by Christianity, and the concept of Deva and the God became very different. And so we need to recognize that Deva and God are two different things. What was this difference? When Christianity came to Europe, God was considered to be the creator, preserver of life, with a heaven and a hell as statistically significant entities where the souls went to meet an indeterminate end. When Bharat was invaded, this revised God concept came with the invaders and got mixed with Dharma. We must recognize this, that there is no Sanskrita cognate for the word religion. Faith and belief are considered dream states because there is no pramana. So faith and belief are actually swapnavastha or dream states. So what is the concept of God in Dharma? The Abrahamic God is a creator, preserver, and adjudicator who lives in a heaven. In Dharma, all creation, including God, comes from a cognitive state of infinite void or peace, or a state of void called Brahman, or also called that or Tat. There is no heaven, only karma. This state of Brahman is cognized when the consciousness is not moving, or the citta is completely steady and without any movement. This is called chitta vritti nirodha, and the state is called samadhi. This is totally different from the concept of Abrahamic God. So the conclusion that we can draw is that in Dharma, the concept of God and religion don't exist as defined by Abrahamic faith. To reiterate, God in the Abrahamic system is a creator, preserver, and adjudicator of the individual and who lives in heaven. But God himself is not really well defined. So it is an assumption, and because the God exists, one has to have faith and one has to, without question, accept the existence of this God. Because of this, there is something called theology or religion, which seeks to support the assumption that there is a God. And there are very firm, strict rules which a person has to follow. This is called religion. In Dharma, the base is the Brahman. And there is no single path to go to the Brahman. You can do anything. There are as many ways as there are people. And a person can change his path as many times as there are thoughts. So there is no hard and fast rule for a person to merge with the Brahman. In Abrahamic system, one cannot merge with a God. One has to live according to God's will. And so these are two different things. In Dharma, we merge with Brahman. In Abrahamic faiths, you have to follow the will of a God. So these are two different systems, and we cannot combine or compare these two. So how does one cognize Brahman in Dharma? In this photograph, we can see Mirabai and Sri Krishna. Mirabai and Sri Krishna have a yoga, a cognitive connection between each of them. It is cognitive. There is an awareness of the existence of the other, and it is in a yoke by cognition. The power of this cognition is called Chaitanyam, and it does not necessarily have to have a form. It can be form or formless. So what happens is that the subject or Mirabai has a yoga with the object, which is Sri Krishna. The choice of deity that you generally get associated with comes from prarabdha karma, or what you have been associated with in your previous lives. The first part, the dance that you have with the deity, is called lasya. This lasya means you are all the time in a material plane with the deity. And then slowly the filters you have with the deity start subsiding. They start breaking. And you then begin to resonate with the deity. And this is called laya or love. What is important for us to understand is that Chaitanyam is the cognitive capability of any entity or identity or Purusha. This is very different from any other way of thinking about a Deva. Let us look at what are the various filters that exist between us and the deity. The first and the most simple filter is Annamaya kośa, or the sheath of materiality. This is the material sheath, our muscles, our body, and things like that. These are the sheaths which are made by physical existence. The next is Pranamaya kośa. Now, prana is motility, that which gives life to various components within the body. And this is called Pranamaya kośa. As you can see in the right hand side, there are different forms of prana. There is the incoming motility, which is called prana. There is the outgoing motility called apana. Okay, we need to recognize that prana moves in a flow. This is called vayu. So prana vayu is the incoming motility. Apana vayu is the outgoing motility. That is the excretory process or all waste that is removed from the system. Udana vayu is the communication or the brand management or the brand positioning of a particular entity. Vyana vayu is the personality. How our aura manifests in the environment, how a personality manifests in the environment, and that is called Vyana vayu. Samana vayu is the circulatory system. There are two such circulatory systems. One is about food and the other one is the blood. We have prana moving as various streams. Now, prana moves within the body through nadis. There are over 80,000 nadis, and these nadis are all the interspaces within the various tissues and the various muscles. Most importantly, there are two nadis called Ida and Pingala with the central nadi called Sushumna. The nadis move in conjunction with various chakras, and so the pranic system is therefore developed. The third system is called Manomaya kośa and the Vijnanamaya kośa, and finally, of course, the Anandamaya kośa, which is the merger when the entity does not have the sense of self and has merged with the Brahman. Now let us look at the Manomaya kośa and Vijnanamaya kośa. What happens is that Manomaya kośa, the manas, is the center where all the cognitive stimuli is collated. So we get stimulus through the indriyas or the various sense organs. This is then collated at the manas. So it could be the amygdala, it could be the prefrontal cortex, it could be a memory, whatever. All our stimulus is collated at these points, and then that stimulus is then compared with our dharma or our conditioning or our sense of self or our natural state. When the stimulus is compared with our dharma, That state is called buddhi or the intellect. The system compares the incoming stimulus with our sense of conditioning, our sense of self, or our natural state. This is then compared with our identity. For as long as the input is congruent with our asmita or our sense of self worth, there is no turbulence. If there is a dissonance, then either it is resolved within or it comes out as a response. And that response is called ahankara or the experience of existentiality. So, our ability to exist within the environment is called ahankara. And then the output or the response comes out through the karmendriyas. Through the whole process, our understanding of what is happening in our environment or Vijnanamaya Kosha, it is determined by two major factors. The first one is the stimulus we get from the consciousness of all the entities that we interact with. If the entities are all in congruence with us, then we are in a state of peace. If our stimulus, the consciousness of the others, is in dissonance, or if we have a rejection or a dejection, then there is turbulence, or we begin to get delusional, we draw inwards. So, what I'm trying to say here is that the consciousness or the chaitanyam of others has an impact on our own chaitanyam, and this is a very important difference between us and others. The second thing is called prajñā or awareness. We have basically two awarenesses. One is called vijnana or from inside to out, and the other one is called jnana, which is the inside to in, what we look at within ourselves, which is what I spoke about earlier, which is annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, and anandamaya kosha. All these koshas, the awareness of that is called prajñā, and that is whenever it happens inwards, it is called jnana. So, how does the consciousness get assimilated within ourselves, or how do we filter it out, and how do we evolve as a person? We can see that the prajñā is the key to the whole thing. Our awareness of the movement of the consciousness is the most important part, and it moves from a distracted state or kshipta. That is, the first part is kshipta or distracted, muda or ignorant and delusional, vikshipta, which is agitated, distraught, or frustrated. And once we have gone past that and we started settling down, we get into what we call ekagrata or single point focus or flow. Very often we also call it a flow. And when our sense of self or the identity has been completely merged or is in resonance with the object, we call it niruddha or no movement of the consciousness, or chitta vritti nirodha. That is, the entire consciousness is not moving at all. It is in a state of void. And when it is in a state of void, it is called the Brahman. The merger with the Brahman is complete. Let us look at how the awareness also can move. The awareness of the movement of chitta then results in the awareness of the self. And this comes in four major stages. The first one is called Jagrat or awakened state. This is the normal state that we are when we are awake and we are experiencing life. The second state is called Svapna or dream state. After a situation, we go back with images of the experience. That is a Svapna. Planning, forecasting, all of this where we use imagination to build something is a Svapna state. That Svapna state is a necessary state, but one must not continuously remain in that state because then one will become delusional. Third is Shushupti. Sushupti is where we do not have filters between us and the objects. The physical and the prāṇa and the manomaya kosha filters begin to subside. The form no longer becomes important to us. We are beginning to look at everything as equal or samadrishti. So for us, a pin versus a person becomes the same. The last is called the fourth stage or Turiya. This is where we begin to move past gunas. The three gunas, that is tamas, rajas and sattva, we begin to transcend that also. And that is when we begin to enter Anandamaya Kosha or the phase of merger or the phase of Samadhi. And as you can see at the bottom of the chart, there are multiple combinations. One is the Vijnana and the Jnana. You can have Vijnana as Jagrat and Jnana as Jagrat. And right down to where Vijnana and Jnana are both in Turiya on the last box in this 4x4 matrix. We hope that you will like our presentation. Thank you. Yoga is the movement of the cognition from turbulence to stillness, from cacophony to silence, from the sense of doership or ahankara to inertness or bhasma. Thank you for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. For more information, do visit my website www.schoolofyoga.in.